Vern. I want to welcome everybody to the Dream Big Summit, creating a better world for yourself and the planet. And I have just the most amazing research scientist, 6 PhD, quantum physicist sitting in front of us, Dr. Vern Woolf. Now, I adore you. I adore everything you've done, and you have changed my life and the thousands and thousands of people's lives who I have touched because of you. So this is my introduction to you. Could you do the rest for me?
Sure, because you are an amazing being, and so is Don. You came decades ago, you caught the message, and you've been teaching people all over the world.
Yes.
And swimming with dolphins while you do it. It's like amazing. So I'm with you all the way.
So you were 6-time PhD in psychology and religion. You were on top of the ladder of everywhere. And
we got some special things in there, like natural science and a PhD in international law and common law and on the restoring of the republic. And I mean, it just goes on like that. And the most important one is the science of consciousness itself.
Yes, and you are, and I warned you ahead of time. I said, let's talk about time travel, creating time, space.
Oh, yeah, that's really good.
Yes.
Okay, so if you take a look at that, and you can see this picture up here, I'll just move this a little bit so you can see it. So
awesome picture. Yes.
That's from Stephen Hawking's book. And, you know, I've got it here. You can go into these, it's, you know, the universe in a nutshell.
Awesome.
And so anybody can get this. And so what Stephen does about middle of the way through the book is he says, look, light bends. Well, they can see that because it'd be an eclipse or something, and still the light comes around the moon when it's eclipsing, or comes around planets or stars when they're in the middle of things. And so they say, well, if light bends, then that means that what we consider to be time also bends. And that's what this diagram is about from Stephen Hawking. Now, lots of people have agreed with this, and they go in and they research it to see what's happening. So if you take something like cancer, and you've got a tumor that cannot be cured and cannot be stopped, and they've tried everything they can, and they give up on it, and just say, well, you've got a few more weeks to live. So Hobbes and his team, they took a single hydrogen atom from inside a cancer tumor, and they put it into an environment of pure water where it couldn't be contaminated, and then they resonated with the frequency of an original hydrogen atom. And this atom in the cancer tumor had changed. So they send this resonating frequency, it's a kind of a holographic thing, which means it's doing with light and resonance frequencies. And they sent the original frequency onto it. And before long, it changed back. They called it time reversal. It went back in its time to its original state. And they thought that was wonderful. And they said, what would happen if we put it back into the cancerous tumor? So they did. And that cancerous tumor immediately began to dissolve, and within 2 days it was gone completely.
So let me ask you, what made them assume they were going back in time? Now, you said original state, but could you not go forward into the future and create an original state or its perfect state, blueprint, let's say?
Of course you can. But that's what they did, and they call it time reversal in the science
literature.
Okay. And that's just one example. You can take Bakarovsky's raspberry. There's another one. So he's got a raspberry. He's a scholar in Russia, and he's got this raspberry patch, and he looks at one branch of a raspberry plant, and it's got a dying tumor raspberry. And he looks over in the other, and here's a beautiful, fresh live raspberry, right? So he says, well, what would happen if I took a holographic picture that's a three-dimensional picture of the raspberry and then shine it on the one that's tumored? So he did. Guess what happened to the tumored one? Well, it immediately became healthy.
So he just shone the light or the holographic
image of the healthy raspberry onto the tumored one.
So I'm going to play and say, well, Vern, do we as humans in our consciousness create holograms?
I thought you'd never ask. Of course we do. All of our senses on our whole body, that's our touch and feelings and your skin, everything, your nose, your eyes, your ears, they're all covered with screens. Now, some of them are fine-grained, like a screen on a window. It's fine-grained so the bugs can't get in, right? And some screens on your body are gross-grained. So if you take a look at that and say, well, what does that mean? What it means is that the information you're receiving from your environment is being filtered. So if you're filtering your environment, why? Because the fine-grained screens pick up the details, and the gross-grained screens pick up the whole picture.
So you're saying the senses that we walk around with are perceptors or screens that receive information, and that is where the hologram comes into. And that is
because if you take the eye, the simplest thing is to take the eye. And if you look at the eyeball, you can see that it has a periphery around the outside. It's all covered with gross-grained screens. It takes in the whole picture. But if you go back to the fovea in the very back of the eyeball, that's a little pin dot thing. It's covered with very fine-grained screens. Now, they lead directly into the center of the optic nerve. And the periphery, the gross-grained screens, lead into the outside. And according to neurologists, there's a lot of ionic activity immediately. And it goes into a conversion process.
Okay, so let's just say I caught the concept of receiving information, even holographic information that is invisible to the eye, which is what dolphins are amazingly good at. But then how do we project? Let's say I want to project a healthy raspberry image onto a diseased one. How do we do that?
Well, there's just a simple step you have to understand. Okay. As soon as it hits the optic nerve, it goes down in through the information management system of the brain and goes into the cells of the body. And each cell has microtubules. There's a network of microtubules over cell. Now you have 50 trillion cells at least, in your body. And so what they do is they take this information coming from your senses and they put it into information sets so that they make sense. And these we call holodynes. That is whole units of power. Dyne meaning like dynamite or something like that. So it's the units of cause. So if you have a picture of something that's like a little pet dog or something that you love, immediately when you see the dog, you go into the holodyne of the dog and it gives you the meaning of that particular situation. And so you then respond to that with love and affection as you usually do. If you see someone you hate, then the hate holodyne is there, and it will give you the response you give for people you hate.
All right. So it creates chemistry, emotions within me. If I conjure up an image or create an internal feeling state of something, emotions, chemistry, all start kicking into gear. Now, I want to project a hologram. How does it affect an external object, so to speak?
Because there's stages of development for the human being. So we went through, this was years and years ago, so we got started in all this. I was in developmental psychology, taking my PhD, and we said, well, how do humans develop? And they grow, and sometimes they grow and become bad little kids, and sometimes they grow and become good little kids. So how does that work? And some people gave their lives for that. They spent their whole lives studying it. So you get Kohlberg and Piaget and some of these people, and they develop, well, they seem to go through stages. Now, Kohlberg got to the adults, but Piaget stayed only with the children. So we got into that, where we said, well, what if you put them both together, and said, what's the whole thing? And that's where we came up with the 7-level or 6-level chart, which has a 7th level hidden in it. So you say, well, wow, what's the 6 levels? First, it's physical, because you got a body. And second, it becomes, and your body has to develop all these processes. And it has like all these trillions of life forms in here, and so they're all learning how to communicate and do their thing. And then you have your personality that develops out of that. And that's amazing, because it's got all kinds of holodynes, and there are people who develop into
So it's the I stage.
And down.
It's the kid when it says me, I, right? It develops the identity.
The terrible twos. Right?
Yeah, right. Okay.
You go through all this, and then you develop into relationships. So you learn to relate to others. And that's where you get into family and relationships like that, and then into other ways of dealing with business. And the interesting thing is, Ilona, that and you know this, I know, but that the patterns that you develop inside are the ones that you manifest and play with on the outside.
Yes.
So when you have a family and you get along fine, then you have a business, you can get along fine there too. But if you have tragedy in your family and you have aggressive, dominant, submissive, and all the games that families play, then those are all experiences that begin to form in businesses. And that's what caused the great economic, dominant, submissive games that have been played. And why there are haves and rich people and have-nots and poor people. And as the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, you have all these conflicts.
So it's a replication of our internal systems that are either functional or dysfunctional, and we just reproject them on the outside. So we have the body, the I state, the relationship state, and then
the system state. Because if you throw a little stone in a pond that's calm, what happens? It ripples. So if you come into a business and it's calm, but you have something that's like a smashing, dominant, or whatever holodyne that you've been practicing and don't even realize you've got, bam, all of a sudden the whole business gets it. And so the collective consciousness, that's what we call that. The collective consciousness is caused as a kind of summary of all the things of the individual consciousness who are involved in that field of consciousness called the business, or the system, or the society, or the global society actually is interrelates, and that's the 6th level, as you get into the global dynamics. And that's where the real changes are occurring right now, because we have millions of people who are practicing holodynamics in 1,000 different ways, because each one of them is individuated. No two individuals are the same. Right. No two snowflakes are the same. No two leaves are the same. We're similar in patterns, but we're all individuated. So when you get into that, the entire system is changing.
So that's number 4, systems. And I just, this is so profound, because I tell you, when I learned this first from you, I knew I know physical myself, I'd worked on relationship, and then comes systems. And I'm like going, systems, belonging to a group, team membership, what is that? Okay, mind you, I was only 26 when I met you, almost 27. I took it on,
28,
and you told me, create an inner guide who can teach you about systems. So I picked dolphins, and let me tell you, dolphins taught me about team management, and that's what I've been learning. I mean, not the only thing, but practicing for the last 20 years. So I have the 35 employees in Bali, and here some in worldwide. I have numbers of team members all playing together to make this business of ours work. But it's the holodynes, these holographic, like you said, images that we hold. They create resonant ripple effects. And when we have mature ones, like you call, the maturity of that holodyne determines the beauty of the reflection. So as we are within, we are without. So I got a guide, and you know what my guides were? I took 2. One were dolphins, because they seem to be really good in team playing. And the number 2 was a grid work of light pattern. So, but I just urge everybody to take a look at your book, Holodynamics, that you have laying there behind you.
Oh, yeah, I do.
And it is phenomenal. It has I mean, all the work you've done. I mean, you are amongst one of the greatest psychologists that walk the earth. You have understood. I mean, I'm not going to stop. This is going to be free for all. And this Holodynamics, how to develop and manage your personal power. Well, it is like you said, you ripple into society, you ripple into the universe. So that book is available on Amazon, or is it on your website, holodynamics.com, or where?
Mm-hmm. It's available both, and you can get it from us. In fact, we'll sign a copy and give it to anybody who wants. So
holodynamics.com. So tell me about level 5.
It's about the principles, because underlying all of this is natural law, and out of that comes principles. And so when you can learn some of these principles, you learn how choice is always, and how we are eternal intelligence. This is where you learn who you are, and you learn who you really are, because it's like the multi-dimensional principle comes up.
Okay, keep talking about principles and give us some examples so we can really follow, and how deeply impactful learning to live by principles is, and what the ultimate principle is.
Okay, so the ultimate principle is that everything is made of information in motion.
Repeat.
Everything. And we know this. Everything is made of information in motion.
Yeah.
And we know from the cyclotrons, we know the bombarding of photons and all that stuff, and looking for the smallest parts, only to find out they're not parts at all, but they are actual spinners of information coming from hyperspace. Now, what is hyperspace? Just what it sounds like. It's beyond our senses, beyond our sense of space, beyond our sense of time. We live in here's a principle, we live in a holographic universe that is multidimensional and totally conscious. So the chair I'm sitting in is conscious, because it's made of conscious information systems. And all of my holodynes are conscious, and they respond to their environment, and they feed back to hyperspace immediately. And when you get into those little, microtubules, which are, it takes 1,000 of them to make the size of a little hair, but they're very, very small. When you get into them, you find out that they are actually storing your information sets. They store what you believe. They store your whole experience. And they have areas inside that have no information in them at all. And then we find out that's because there's information being received all the time. So when you get to that principle, and you understand that something is feeding into your microtubules every second of every day, and then you get that can happen so fast that before you even think a single thought, they can actually take a look at all your menu of options that you're going to face and give you all the options and send those into your microtubules before you can think the thought. And when you make the choice, it's immediately recorded back. So then we said, well, what the heck is sending that information into you? Now, a lot of people believe that's God. And it is, but it's not the God that most people think of. The God that sends that into you is you, because you are an eternal, intelligent being of love and light. So you can take any one of those subjects and say, well, how can I be like a being of light? So I say, okay, I'm going to eat something like a piece of carrot or cabbage or something. So what's in the cabbage? Well, where's the cabbage been growing? It's been growing in sunlight. And so the photons go into the cabbage. Well, that's good. The cabbage can use it, right? But when you eat it, the photons also go into you. And guess what your body does? It does not reject the photons. It uses them. And that's why these 50 trillion life forms inside of you, or 5 trillion life forms, 50 trillion cells, can all communicate. They do it as fast as light. That's why if you got a flock of birds and they're flying along and one bird sees a hawk and it's a danger, it takes 1/70th of a second for the bird, and we know this because we recorded it on camera, high-speed cameras. It takes 1/70th of a second for the bird to recognize that's a hawk, and another 70th of a second for it to begin to fly away. The interesting thing is the entire flock of birds flies away on the second 70th. They all heard it at the same time. How do they do that? Because these microtubules that the birds all have are communicating all the time with each other. They do it in quantum physics explanations of it. It's a resonating frequency, so the whole flock is always one flock. And a bunch of fish or one group of fish, and a herd of wildebeest or one herd of wildebeest. It's all through nature. Ants are a perfect example. They all work as one unit.
So the biggest principle is everything is holographic. So what is within me is without. I have a very difficult question. I want to save that for a little bit later, because I'm a little bit concerned what I see outside of myself, and I'm like going, geez, do I need to do some household cleaning here? I mean, my personal universe looks really brilliant, heaven on earth, but I'm going, well, a little bit further out there, I'm not so sure. But although wherever I've stepped so far, thank God, knock on wood, it's been brilliant. I stepped into these amazing, I'm in Rishikesh. I think of a woman that I need to write to, and she stands next to me. I think of Rod Newton. I think of Dr. Rod Newton, Vern, and he comes, Ilona, what are you doing here in Rishikesh? And I'm going, I think I'm in that favorite movie that it's Delirious. Delirious, it's the author, he writes something and he writes, where is the beer? But he misspells beer and writes deer, and in walks the deer. It's like that. So we need to be careful what ripple effects we send out at a hyperdimensional field. Now, can you walk us, first of all, tell us a level number, give us another couple of principles that we should try to or learn to incorporate into our daily life, and then I'd like to go into level 6.
So once you know who you are, then you know who we are. And when you look at that, you can look at it with new eyes. So you don't just look at the person, their body, physical, and personality. You look deeper, and what you see is this full potential self. Now, this is out of physics, quantum physics, where they found out the potential energy is actually driving everything. It's the most powerful force on Earth, potential energy. And so you say, well, what potential is driving the human? And that's the energy that comes from your full potential self, or your soul, or your core essence of your being, or whatever name the ancients gave to them. Now, you're really good at getting the wisdom of the ancients and the people involved, and you are talking with them all the time, because death is only a passage into another dimension, and we live in a multidimensional world. And so all of the conflicts and all of the chaos and all of the what they actually call entropy, it's the decaying of everything. So civilizations rise and then they fall. And they build these huge buildings, and then they all decay. And on it goes like this. But the interesting thing is that through it all, people learn, and they become more conscious. And so when you look at the whole field, which is level 6, and you say, well, what is this principle that's guiding the whole field? And that's where the principles become really valuable. Because one of the guiding principles is the entire field is a field of consciousness. And that if you take a look at Einstein's relativity thing, what does C stand for? Well, actually, Einstein
speed of light, right? No.
Well, it was the speed of light with the speed of light was actually the what do you call it when you put 1/2 and you got 2 on the bottom? But anyway,
the root, the square.
It was divided by the speed of light. And so when somebody asks him what is it, he says the closest thing I can come to is consciousness.
Oh, yes, my
But
Einstein.
matter and consciousness and the speed of light are all interconnected. That's because the speed of light is just an arbitrary number, because the speed of light is not actually this 183 miles per second. It varies, and it goes into, it depends how fast you're going and all that kind of thing. So you look at that and you say, well, what's the principle involved? The principle is, look, you have a core essence of your being. When you open to that core essence and allow it to pour into your body, then all the qualities that you've had forever, like love and, making really good contracts and trust and dependency and integrity and all those kinds of principles come alive in you, and you demonstrate them. And when that happens, the same rippling effect happens everywhere.
Yes.
And therefore, all of humanity has become aware of that, and all of humanity is going through the greatest transition in its entire history that we know of. Now, the ancients had ancient technology that was way beyond ours. They could move a 20-ton block of granite that's been molded exactly correctly up a mountain that you can't hardly even climb up for 200 miles and just put it in this wall. And then, that was them building their high skies. They're building their advanced
skyscrapers. Yes.
skyscraper,
Yeah. So when we are at level 6, we enter the field of the allness.
Of the allness, of the oneness, because everything is connected and you know it. And you can talk to it. You can talk to a tree.
Yep.
That is what they call tree huggers, and they make fun of it, but it's not. It's like people who understand that. And they get messages from the trees because the trees know. And dolphins saved my life, And so I'm looking at it, and I swam with them for 2 years, and they got so friendly with me that they knew I was leaving before I even knew it.
Yeah.
And they all came together on my last swim there in Kealakekua Bay on the Big Island, where I was recovering from that injection of uranium. And I'm going, holy moly, why are you guys all here? And they kept communicating with me, because they were healing me at the same time.
Yes.
It took a while. But boy, do I love the dolphins. So they are, and mantas and all these creatures are way more advanced than we are. Way more.
Exactly what I feel. I mean, they respond to telepathy like no human would, except a few very trained ones. Now, walk us through what I've heard in some of the other interviews. We as humans typically run into negative emotions, into traumas, into bad feelings of the day. The guy passing us on the street and angering the part of us that gets triggered, if that's what we still get triggered on. But it may have also been the sexual abuse. It may have been the negative beliefs we were bombarded with as children. Now, this is how I met you. You had been using this technique that you describe in your book, Holodynamics, on a whole valley full of teenagers back in the early 80s on drug addiction, right? And in your dreams, this quest came, please help us, these arms, I remember this story of yours, came saying, please help us, bring us a technique that really works, which is exactly the prayer I had half a year before I heard you at a conference in the lecture hall that was filled to the brim, up the aula, up everywhere. And I was sitting there in the high bleachers listening to you. I wrote it up in my book, The Wisdom of the Dolphins. And every hair on me stood. And then I said, this is the answer to my prayer. So what do you what system did you develop? What do you suggest people do to shift their holodynamic powers within these little many different activities of energies when they're not so pleasant, when they are painful, when they have been imprinted with pain?
First of all, let's talk about a certain principle. Like, does choice exist? If you don't believe that choice exists, then you become the victim and you get caught in the downdraft games. That's what we call them. They're downdrafts. When I was working with the terrorists in Israel or Palestine, in that region, they called it the river of death. And so it was downdraft. And so I just introduced them to the river of life, which is updraft. Now, when you get to kids on drugs or any other dependency, And you know, some areas are so religious that they're totally dependent on religion. And so they become dependent, and then drugs are a natural part of that dependency because they say, well, you're more, this, you know, some drug is more effective than and reliable than my minister or my parents or whatever. So how do you get them out of that? So that's when we got into teaching people on unfolding potential.
So can you walk us through the steps? Walk us a little bit through the steps of what is done first, and then...
First, you have to have a place of peace. So you have to imagine a place of peace. Dream about a place of peace. Dream that you're at peace because you can choose to be at peace because choice is. If choice was not, then there would be no field of consciousness. And if there's no field of consciousness, nothing exists. So get back to reality. Choice exists. Well, how can choice exist? I'm just a drug addict. Well, you chose to be a drug addict. Well, my parents, you know, my ministers, my churches, my schools, the kids, and they have all these excuses, right? But they're all choices. So how do you get out of the choices? Well, you go to your place of peace. And then you tune in to who you really are. And as soon as you do that, you knock on the door and the door will open. So you just get peace and you start tuning in. And as soon as you tune in, you have to know the right questions to ask. So what do you want? I want a better drug. Well, you're going to get laughter from your full potential because that's not what the full potential is about. So you say, well, how did I get in this thing? So then you can go to the place of planning. Now there's a place, a dimension. Now remember, we live in a multidimensional world. So there are different dimensions you can go to. And one of them is your place of peace. And another is the dimension in which your full potential is there. And then you can go to the planning place where you found out that, oh, you mean to say my dad was an alcoholic and beat my mother and beat me and caused me all this agony? Yeah. So you get to place of planning, you find out your dad and you chose to have that kind of life so you'd have a challenge. So you could choose, so you could discern, make a choice on what was right and what was wrong for you. And then you can begin to live your life. And it doesn't matter how bad you are, how sick you are, how angry you are, or any other of the holodynes involved. They're all just part of the plan. You can transform them all. You can do it one holodyne at a time or a network of holodynes at a time. Just get your full potential to guide you.
Okay, so maybe let's just walk through a couple of steps. Let's just say we do them one at a time. We would just take one feeling of something as small as, let's say, anger. I wrote a story up that shows the miraculous effect of it in two different books. One in the Dolphins, Love and Destiny, Wisdom of Dolphins, and one in the new one. Actually, it also came out in the Big Secret book with Jack Canfield. Both are about traveling because that's when I get the most anxious. One was in a train and one was in an airplane. And both times I was going to be late or not making it. So here's anger. Here's frustration. What do? We feel it. Where do we feel it? And what do we do with it?
Okay, so now, if you're talking about books, I've written all these books on that in detail with every situation in 160 cultures. And just put them all in there so you'd have this dance of life. And then all the manuals, go 5 manuals with the dance of life. And then the books on things like therapy manifestos. So if it's something serious enough that you think you need therapy, here's how you do it. And here's 95 different principles showing what these treaties are and how you apply them. And now if you don't do this, you're not really a therapist. And same with health. If you're going to heal from something, here's how you do it. A whole book on it.
All right.
And so then you take all of that. So
all right. Okay. We'll go to your website. We'll look, holodynamics.com. But walk me through
what
a couple of steps. Red.
How big is it?
Oh, huge. This big.
Okay, where is it in your body?
Oh, well, I'm going back in time to remember it was in my tummy. That's where I typically feel anger. Ugh.
You bring it out and take a look at it and you surround it with love, what happens?
Well, I take it out, first of all. I actually got a little bit bigger outside of myself. I looked at it. Okay, hi there. Well, it's wanting to, it's there. It's communicating. What?
So ask it what it wants.
I just ask it what it wants.
Sure.
Hey.
Communicate with it like a real person. It's a real entity. It's real. It's alive.
All
So
right.
everything inside of you. You call it anger, and there's all these things it does. So why is it doing all that? What does it want?
Okay. So,
Love it.
now that I'm outside of it, it's like, okay, I can talk to it. I'll ask it, hey, what do you really want? It laughs. It likes that I ask it questions. It says, I want to be on time. Well, who would have guessed?
So how could you be on time without causing me all this anger?
So how could we be on time? It like goes, I don't know, just be there. Good answer.
Right. And so what have you got inside of you that could help you just be there?
Well, so it kind of flashes the idea of the end result. It goes like, be there, like arrive on time, be there, like just
Yeah, so who have you got that could help you be there?
Well, help me. I don't know. Superman.
Would Superman be willing to take the time to help you?
Oh, sure. I love Superman.
So what would happen if this anger became Superman?
Hey, cool.
Is the anger willing to become more effective?
Let me see.
What it wants?
Let me check. Anger, hey, would you like to become more effective and get me to where I really want to be? And let Superman do the job? Or you become Superman? Yeah, it wants to become Superman. It gets me there in a hurry, like a rocket ship. Yes.
There you go. So
Okay.
From now on, you could have a place of peace with a little round table. You put Superman there, and when you need to get someplace, say, Superman, will you take care of this?
Okay.
Get there.
On time.
And you and Superman work together.
So the thing that we just didn't do because we're doing this really fast is the absorption of the old energy into the new one, so the anger becomes the new image. What I typically love to ask is like what it would feel like if I were already there. So I bypass the symbol of somebody who helps me, but I just be there. So then I actually had a rainbow. That's what I wrote up. And the biggest miracle happened? I arrived before the allotted time. I saw all the clocks ticking late. I was late, 40 minutes late. When we arrived, we didn't see our friend. We walked up to the platform. We looked for him. A little bit deeper, he was gone. And then Don looked at a flower shop, and he comes walking towards Don and says, and he sees both of us from a distance, Don, Ilona, what are you doing here early? We looked at the clock, and now instead of the other clocks that we'd seen in Germany, always displaying that clock that says late, 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 this one was totally different and early. And I'm like going, do we have wintertime switching? It was still in I think it was September, the month where we were traveling. It was not time to switch, so there was no logical explanation, but we time jumped. Now, I have a couple of those stories where I describe step by step how those things are done.
You can tell your stories on your own time.
No, I will. Yes, tell me a magical story.
So I'm late for a
Where?
meeting. It's a half an hour away. I've got 5 people with me in the car. We only have 5 minutes to get there. 5 minutes later, we were there.
And how far was the meeting?
It was a half an hour away.
So you time jumped 25
70 miles or something.
Yikes.
Yeah.
It was like.
In other words, time is only what you make it.
Okay. What process? Walk us through the process you did in order to make that.
I just asked my full potential self. I use my full potential self, not Superman.
Okay.
But, it's like I just said, can you get us there on time? And we were there on time.
Yes. Awesome. So you just delegate. You go to a higher dimension, you say, do this, and it does.
I ask you to do it.
Oh, you ask.
I don't tend to get bossy.
I love that. That's a great thing. Can you do this, please? Pretty please. It agrees. Super cool. So
I got lots of stories like that, hundreds of them.
Yes. So these kids that were on drugs, what did they do? You walked them through the same techniques?
Actually, we worked with them on the street for a while, and 2 holodynamic teachers took the job. And what they said is, we'd like to have you come and take a look at your academic standing, because they'd all dropped out of school. This is in the middle of LA, and so they dropped out of school. They were all in gangs. They were having wars. They were doing all that stuff, and drugs was like maximum thing. So these 2 teachers just said, okay. One of them wrote their dissertation on this. She was wearing on a doctorate. But they said, okay, we'd like to have some chats with you. So they organized these chat rooms. and the kids came just to see what was going on. They got so excited that 300 of them showed up, and then 600 in the next 2 weeks, and they all started this transformation process using holodynamics. Taught them about their full potential, taught them about how to unfold their own potential, taught them how to do that no matter where they were, and how to make the same with their relationships, their systems, and then learn the principles and all that. And they did this all within 3 months, and 99% of them all got back to academic standing in schools and dropped off of drugs.
Yes, awesome. That was Dr. Bobby Barnes. She wrote her PhD thesis on it. Yep, and she used the Texas self-evaluation technique to do the scientific part, and actually found out that the technique that she used, the holodynamics techniques, improved the children's self-esteem on 6 items by 10 points. It was like so radical that everybody was aghast at the results that she was getting, and they were dropping out of the old life and moving on with their life into the new direction from the higher potential self. That is pretty phenomenal.
You should have seen what happened in Russia.
What happened?
Well, it was in the 80s, and Reagan is saying, the axis of evil is in Russia. Before you know it, I'm over in Russia. And our first meeting was with the head of the military for the Soviet Union. And our job was to be able to say, we want to change from war mentality to peace mentality.
I remember.
And it was an impossible job. But 3 minutes later, it had been accomplished. Should I tell you that story a little bit?
Yes, please do. I'm going to give you all the time in the world.
So here's this table. It's about 2 feet across, and it's 17 feet long in this big room. And we walk in about 2 minutes early, and there's 17 men. I'll never forget this. And they all got so many things on their chests from their military accommodations, awards and all that, positions. And their hats are all perfectly level. And they're sitting at attention. And no one even looks at us. Huh. No one says anything. It's dead silence. And it became so heavy, it was just like, okay, we didn't say anything either. Exactly on time. The guy across from me stands up, slams the table with his fist, and screams, "War is inevitable," in Russian. He sits down. Nobody moves. I looked over, and Barbara Marks Hubbard, who was with me and co-chairing the thing, and 2 ministers were like totally intimidated. I just went to my full potential's house, stood up, pounded with both my fists on the table, put it directly in his face, right up close to his eyeballs. War is not inevitable. What is inevitable is that you, sir, will unfold your own potential and the potential of your family and the potential of your community and the potential of your family of communities in your nation and the family of nations, sir. And sat back down. And you know how you sit and when you look up?
Yeah. There
he was. His head was about this far from the table looking up. Who the heck is in that guy?
Who just talked to me? Good. Yes.
And I smiled and I winked.
Yeah.
And he got it. I knew he was bluffing. And I called him on his bluff. And he laughed. And then every hat in that place tilted and they all laughed. Yes. The game had been called. And then he said, in English this time, "Yes, but how do you do that?"
Okay. Good question.
And that started the whole thing about the perestroika. It started the whole movement on unfolding potential. I was called in immediately to be investigated by the power or the information control system of the Soviet Union. Hundreds of people couldn't even see out their faces at the back. It was supposed to be a business meeting. It was an interrogation meeting. It was supposed to last half an hour. 3.5 hours later, somebody from the back says, "He's okay," in English. And this translator, they gave me the worst translator I ever had when I was over there. And so the whole thing was just a misery, and I didn't know what to do. I just was being myself, And then they gave me the okay, and then I started teaching. And I taught like a minimum of like 500 people at a time, but sometimes 5,000 or 10,000 people, and taught them holodynamics all over the country. And 2 years later, they declared communism illegal.
Yes.
In Russia.
So this was pre-communist ending.
Yeah, and then I was there when they shot the cannon into the Duma, that was their Congress, and made them vote communism illegal. And that changed the entire government, and then they dissolved the entire Soviet Union into Russia and the 17 republics. And that took me 7 years of total negotiation with each of those republics to see if they could unfold their potential individually as nations and as people and so forth. So all these principles you and I have been talking about were used to help end the Cold War, and that's why they gave me the Dragon Slayer Award.
Really?
Dragon Slayer Award is like the Purple Heart. It's the highest award they could give a civilian. And I said, Dragon Slayer? Dragon for what? What was the dragon? And they said, it was the greatest dragon in our history, communism.
So when you taught the people, you taught them these stacks, holodynamics that you described in your book.
Just simple truths. And we take it from like the sciences that go and discover these people who are so courageous. So, you know, what I'm doing is like, it's built on the foundation laid by all these amazing scientists. And I love them dearly. And they're all part of this transition. And now it's spread. I found out that the Cold War was not the cause of all the wars, that there was something else causing them. That's what took me into the whole thing about economics and banking.
Right.
All that stuff.
Let that be another conversation. That's a deep and huge conversation. Now let's go back to my original question about multidimensionality, time shifting, and creating holograms. I mean, that sounds to me, if I'm going to play like this, I heard this for the first time. It's like, whoa, you're saying my mitochondrials carry vibrational fields. They communicate faster than the speed of light to a field in which holographic or spinning fields of information coordinate the appearances of the outer physical world, including time?
Including time.
So when, and you shifted time, let's say when you wanted to be on time, you just simply went to a higher dimensional self of yourself and asked it to coordinate time space so that you would arrive on time.
I don't believe it's higher.
Okay.
I think it's just presence. That's what we call it. It's like, it's not just above you. That
right.
was Jesuits in the 4th century who claimed that. And then they put themselves in between. But nobody's in between you and your presence.
Right.
Presence is already outside of time and inside of time at the same time. In quantum physics, it's called the superposition.
Okay.
To be in and out of a situation at the same time. So therefore, with the Soviet Union generals and all that, I was in the situation but out of it at the same time. And then the words come as what you need to say. And the words are actually living things also.
Yes.
So they have meaning. And your DNA and everything in your body respond to your words. So if you say, I'm sick of this, I'm sick of that, pretty soon guess what you get?
Yep.
You get sick. Like at school, high school, where all the girls got infections in their vaginas, and nobody could figure out how come it all happened, because it happened to the whole group of girls, and there's no contact. And so they started researching it, and the counselor there found out that they kept saying that pisses me off.
Yep, words become reality. And I think I think the Tibetans have a beautiful saying, is be mindful of your mind. They don't say soul, but and then speech. And they're so mindful of what they utter, because truly we know the true masters, what they speak becomes reality. And we might as well start now assuming that we have that mastership and speak accordingly.
So you look at that and you say, okay, so what does that do about time?
Yes.
Well, if you go to your full potential and your place of peace, you can enter into any time zone. And most of us are carrying baggage, if I can put it that way. It's like we have actually been taught. Now, it's not just being taught as babies and so forth. It's being that we actually inherit the microtubules information systems. And these microtubules have all holodynes. So in one tail of the sperm, you have 1,000 years of memories. All the holodynes of every man, all the holodynes of every woman, and all the holodynes of all your relationships and systems are all contained in the tail of the sperm that now goes into the egg. And in the covering of the egg are also microtubules that also have all the ones for the woman. So all the microtubules from the men and all the microtubules from the women combine. So A plus B equals C, and it's a new invention, so to speak, or a new creation.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing is dynamic. But when you get this baggage, like if you come from a line of like in Haiti where everybody was pirates, then the Haitians have these holodynes that say whatever comes to Haiti, we sell. And therefore, when they go to do something constructive in Haiti and they send in equipment, pretty soon it disappears. So where did it go? We don't know, but they sold it and made money. So you say, okay.
Mindset.
That's mindset. So you say that, okay, so do you think Americans have any mindset?
Uh-huh.
And so you see, the only good Indian is dead Indian.
Oh. Well, they also brought the Calvinists over, and the Calvinists, you know what they believed fundamentally? Not all of the people in America are Calvinists, but they believed that God's blessing was shown to the man or the woman through wealth. So they don't, especially those who came from that descendants, saw no discrepancy between wealth and being spiritual. Right. Whereas all the ones that they left behind in Europe all believed that, either you give the money away to the church and that's when you're pure, or else the only purity is in poverty. So those mindsets run deep in family lives.
Yeah, and they keep going and going. So what do you do with them? So what's what we call, you step out of time. Now, you know that nothing can be destroyed. That's another principle. It's a living principle. Nothing can be destroyed. So even heat coming from a stove isn't destroyed. It dissipates into the environment. So all the memories of your ancestors cannot be destroyed. They always exist. And they exist in what's called the Sanskrit, if you're into ancient history. So you look and say, what does that mean? It means that if you step out of time with the guidance of your full potential self, you can go back to any era of your family tree. So you have all these ancestors. So maybe you had somebody who was an inventor. You want to go back and find out how they invented. So you can go back and watch their life and actually join with them and help them discover something. You might even give them information that shows them how to invent that. And then they have this inspiration and they go ahead and invent it, right? So that's how the Bessemer converter got going, how to change iron into steel. It was invented in America and in France at exactly the same time. And it's called the Bessemer converter because the Bessemer actually filed his patents 4 hours before they got into France.
Yikes. Yeah.
But the question is, how did they invent it at the same time? So you look at that, and all these inventions that are occurring come from someplace. Mm-hmm. It may be something in the past, but it also may be something in the future. So why don't you step out of time, take your little helicopter through this little space here instead of being on a little future train, get a helicopter and go into the future and then find out how the future actually unfolds. Oh, it is so exciting. It's beyond words. It's so profound, so integrated, so peaceful, so loving, so absolutely amazing. There's a magnificent accomplishment. Guess who's responsible?
Your higher self that goes into the field of the potential. You keep calling it the higher
self, but I call it your
full potential. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Yep.
Because I don't want you to become Jesuit. Okay?
No. Definitely.
Anyway, Sorry. Hey,
Nope.
you say, okay, so maybe some of that's coming from the future. So why don't you learn how to go into the future and find out what's needed? And then focus on something that has to be done and then figure out how it can be done in a way that's really effective and creates things like sustainability.
Yes.
Or environmental balance.
Yes.
Or community involvement with the animals and the other living creatures here. So far we've killed more species than any time in history except the
dinosaurs. But so what we need to do and what we all can do is go into a future where a project or a problem has already been solved, occupy it with our presence, and it opens the doorway of information to flood into this time and space.
Right, and you have to prepare yourself because you might not be able to understand their language or anything about it.
But just being.
Just being. Your being will understand it, but you then have to do the work.
Right.
Getting the brain so that it has holodynes that say, oh, I see. Oh, I see. And you really have to be able to understand it.
Ultimately, we just resonate into that future because the multiple possibilities all exist simultaneously. So the one I want to vibrate around myself is the one that I can hold as a potential in my own field. Now, that may mean sometimes our own field, but it may mean a global field, right?
Right. Like we have a project right now in one of the countries that's supposed to be, the bastion remaining country left to the cabal. They don't know we have a whole holodynamic program there. We even have a branch of the Academy of Holodynamics there. And they've been teaching how to unfold your potential. And that whole civilization is changing, even though the political figures are still Kabbalion and still want war and blah, blah, blah.
So earlier you said that the nature of life is to rise, and there is syntropy and there's entropy. These two forces, we consciousness create syntropy, we spin the informational fields, we bring into birth the being of a potential, and there's entropy, the nature of something. Otherwise, we would have an overabundance of heat and of everything. Children, trees, everything would be, we need balance. So we need the decline, we need the rise. So is war part of that entropic force, or can you envision a more benign entropic force on this planet for this learning?
Yes, to your latter.
Okay.
Look,
give me a vision.
How can consciousness work if you're not conscious enough to discern between updraft and downdraft?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know the difference between the river of life and the river of death, you're pretty much just a piece of blob, and it takes you wherever it takes you. But once you get to the place of planning, I guess I could just tell one story. Is that okay to tell a story?
Yes, I love that.
Here's this lady. She's a sexual therapist, what they call a surrogate. She helps people come through their sexual inhibitions and blocks. And she's really good at it. So she comes to me in my therapy clinic and says, I'm a therapist, and I can show other people how to have orgasms, but I can't have them. I've done everything I know, and I can't have an orgasm. So we said, okay, here's some of the things. We took her through the tracking process where you take your holodynes and start looking at it. And she says, oh my gosh, that comes through my family tree. So we started going back through her family tree. 400 years. She's a nun in a convent monastery. Mm-hmm. And she's scrubbing the floor. And in walks the priest holding a Bible with a golden trim around it. I'm giving you the story details she gave me.
Yes.
And suddenly he says, at darkness on the tower bell. And she just nods her head, and as the evening is settling, she goes up to the tower bell and goes naked. She knows that's her job. He comes in, strips naked, and has sex with her. They both get dressed, goes back. Eventually, she conceives a baby. And she has to give that baby away because they sacrifice babies. Done with nuns. They now sacrifice any kind of babies they get a hold of, part of their worship of darkness. But anyway, that's another story. But anyway, so she does that. So she comes back and says, that's horrible. I don't want to do this. And I said, just keep going. She goes back to 1100 years ago. One of the time of the Crusades. And there she's a princess. And her father is the king. And he has 3 young men take her from one castle to another castle so she'll be safer when he's gone on the Crusades. They pass through this woods. She gets into the brush and tears her dress. They stop, they look at her legs, and they all decide they want to have her, and they're going to the Crusades. They probably won't come back. So they multiply rape her. And then they leave her there, and they go on the Crusades, and she has to make her way to the castle. That's even worse, she says. So he said, keep going. She went back 6,000 years. She's in a community that's a tribal community. And she sees herself as a young girl who has cut her hair and dressed in white. And she looks like one of the young men. All the young men, and there's several hundred of them, going to this meeting where the priests are going to tell the young men how they can get the power of God and maintain control over all the women. In the middle of the ceremony, which lasts a couple of days, she has her first menstruation period. And they discover it. And they take her to the front, strip her naked, put her on the altar, take all her sexual organs out, and leave her there to die.
Ouch.
Well, the whole civilization there polarized. The men taking total control, and the women being total subservient, or they would be put on the altar. So, how do you solve that one?
Yep, tell me.
So she went to the place of planning, first with the priest and the nun. Found out they made the agreement so that the nun could fortify the differentiation between males and females. The males could have religious authority, and the females had to do whatever they wanted, even though it was against their so-called doctrine. So they made a new deal. She thanked them both because they certainly did a good job. Then she went to the one with the
Crusades,
the priest, and the king and that. She called those 3 young men to the place of planning, and her dad, and the entire army that went for the, Crusades. And she got into the whole system of crusading, and she called everybody together, everybody who'd ever been on a crusade on either side. And her full potential called a meeting and said, what was the plan? And they explained the plan to her.
Which was?
The division of nations, religious divisions, divisions, even between males and females. And then the 3 young men said, we were chosen by you to create the rape so that you would have that dynamic in your family tree. Well, they had a party, and they all decided it was no longer necessary. So she got back 6,000 years, and here's this. This is getting to be a long story, isn't it?
Oh, keep going, yes, because I'm sure a lot of women have parts of those memories still stored in them.
So here's this little girl on the altar, and her full potential's there, and she calls up the full potential of all the men and all the boys. And then says, we'd also like to call the full potential of all the women. Mm-hmm. So she had this big community calling. They had a big place to do it and all that. And so then they said, here's the situation. And they began to look at it and say, yes, that's what we agreed to. Why? And they discovered it was to set the family tree so they would have all these other elements in division and separation and would not allow you to have an orgasm.
And the purpose was to create that outcome, but what was the higher purpose? What did they really want? What did they really
higher
want?
purpose is so that you could learn to be conscious of everything in all these dimensions and integrate them into synergy.
And
That's
become
the purpose.
the synergizing force.
Anyway, so she came out of that just glowing, went home to her husband. Next morning, I got a call from her husband and said, "What did you feed her? 17 orgasms? I want some." That's a direct quote.
Is it a real quote?
Yeah.
So by going to the higher place of planning, calling up the full potential of the situation where you obviously have
place of planning. You
place
want
of
to
planning.
keep making everything higher.
No, it's okay. Do the place of planning and pull up the full potential, and you discuss the situation. Obviously, the full potential has a very different perspective because it sees the past and the future and doesn't see the enemy in the other one, nor the...
It sees the enemy as being your best friend. They did what you wanted.
Yeah, right.
Look, if you have a child who's abused, guess what? You get into the place of planning, you'll find out that that child being abused by a parent or whoever is in agreement to have that challenge so that she could become, or you could become conscious and then overcome it.
And become...
to do that, you have to become conscious of multiple dimensions.
Right. And then also express the love rather than the hatred, rather than the division, become aware of the unity. So I remember two different instances where in a seminar people did that. They went back to the place of planning, talked to the full potential of the father in a past when they had been getting nothing but terrible things from the parent, come home from the seminar. Two different men came home, tell me the story. They got phone calls while they were gone and left the fathers, either one left a message, the other one called up to meet him and said, "I am so sorry." And he had not spoken to the father, had not discussed that there was anything going on in their own mind and heart, no change of feelings. The father called to say, "I wanted to say I love you," or "Let's get together. I want to just put this behind me."
Yeah, entire family wars end that way.
So just shifting our own past imaginarily in this out of time and space holographic field creates emotional changes in the people we interact with.
It's not imaginary.
And
it's
nations.
Real as anything.
Nations.
It's real as anything.
Time. We arrive on time. Airplane. I mean, it just, I won't tell you my story because it's in the book, but it is miraculous when you get to the very core ability to communicate at that hyperdimension to the source of the potential and then allow that into your world now.
Miracle. The mere I call.
The mere I call, meaning?
The miracles.
The miracle, yes. So, true time and space potential, easy to shift through becoming conscious and inviting whatever appears as the enemy in to communicate with it and say, what do you really want?
You have three major processes going on inside your body. One is rational. That brought us through the whole thing with the Middle Ages and all that stuff. It got us into the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
And then you have emotions, which is like an ocean of things. That's where anger and fear and love and all that stuff, they're called emotions. It's energy in motion. And they're like the ocean that crashes against the rocks of rationality. And it's an endless game. And there are very few solutions to anything when you're playing those games, when you're processing information in that way. But when you get into the being, so this little 5-year-old says, you got a thinker, you got a feeler, and you got a beer. And we all laugh because somebody said it's not a Budweiser. But anyway, you say, okay, so the beer, what is this beer? This is the core essence of your being. It's the real you. And it's beyond time and in time at the same time.
Yeah. And we don't have to go anywhere. In that sense, you are completely right. It's not a higher, it's not a lower. It is permeating everything all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. And it is good that you point that out because it differentiates time and space. We think we have to go out there and up there. it happens to how we interpret life. If we were a snake, we would go sideways and into darkness. That would be the ultimate height. But we're humans who go upright, and the sun is up there. So that's where our metaphors come from. So we borrow them from our biology, really. But okay, so I agree totally with your words. We create reality. So our full potential, it is the potential in the field that we need to tune into and ask it into action. Correct?
It's pretty good.
You
do so good.
I'm summarizing you right now.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Vern, of course, I have taken all your teachings and put them to the test and put thousands of people through those tests. And I just got another email just the other day, and said, I have used your techniques since I came and learned them from you, and I have helped so many people as a therapist transform. So many therapists have taken your technique, holodynamics, instead of all the other techniques that they've practiced, including that's what I did. I dropped all the others.
Integrated. It's kind of like having overall survey of everything, and you look at therapy and you got a real problem because the Kabbalians, that is the ones who are totally selfish and greedy and only want to make money and so on, they're the ones in charge of the International Institute of Mental Health, and they're the ones that have written the DMV and all that. That's a whole other story, because anybody can be classified legally as mentally ill using their system, and that's the total control system, so they can take people and then do these atrocities in experimenting with them, and what they call, understanding mental health, and really they're using it to control people.
Actually, they infiltrate any type of group that's large enough to make a difference, usually try to eliminate the leader. That's what happened, I guess, when you went to Russia.
But that has all been solved.
Yes, perfect.
Literally, those people are now made accountable for what they're doing. So I'm really pleased with what's really happening in the world. I'm looking back on it, saying, "Oh, that was good. Oh, that's good."
I remember in the 80s, you were drawing pictures on a wall. I remember one picture you drew from the future. You said the educational system will completely change. There will be these walls out of glass, and you just have to touch them, and the information will come off the glass wall. Remember that? And I'm sitting there drawing, this guy's out there in the future, like 1,100 years. No, you know what they have now? These companies, I mean, you see them in advertisement, these computers are on glass, they draw and all these informations come out. It hasn't been, 20, 35 years? How long have I known you? Since 87, is that 30 years now? 88, oh my God. So 30 years later, this has been already in the making. The quantum supercomputers, they have now entangled particles that you always talked about, sharing at a quantum state the information, so there is no traveling of information from A to B. It is simultaneous. They're writing lots of articles as we speak about it.
When do you find out what's going to happen next?
Yes, tell me. Can you tell me? Do you have any future visions? I would love to.
We'll do that in the interview.
Okay. All right. Yes, we're coming to Sedona. We're doing a live interview that will be aired on quantumliving.guru, and that will take us into the interview with Dr. Vern Woolf, live about the future potential of our human race and existence. I love you.
Love you too. Always will.
Always will. Always have. Thank you. More to come. Awesome. All right. Thank you.
And all of you,
okay.
have a great day.
All right. Thank you.